This graph represents GDP versus S&P 500, or the stock market. GDP is in blue and S&P 500 is in red. S&P 500 has a leading relationship with GDP. This graph represents a change in GDP versus CPI. CPI is the Consumer Price Index and is in red. It means it is the price level of a market basket or consumer goods and services purchased by household. CPI has a lagging relationship with GDP.
The Gulf War, or Operation Desert Storm, as known by the U.S., was a war in Kuwait where the U.S. tried to stop an Iraqi invasion. Not only was oil a main reason for the U.S. intervention, but so was the idea of being the UN's police force in stopping the spread of the dictator Saddam Hussein. This ties into the world stage of economics, not only because it is a war, but also because it had to deal with world oil prices. At this time, the Soviet Union collapsed. This officially ended the Cold War. The U.S. made many military alliances during the Cold War, which meant they had a lot of military spending. The military expenditures for the U.S. on the war were about $8 trillion. Because Russia and the U.S. were superpowers of the war, they had the most substantial economic liabilities. When the war ended, the U.S.'s debt shrank briefly.
Hurricane Andrew, the second most costly hurricane in the United States, struck Florida on August 16, 1992. The hurricane destroyed homes, businesses, and people's occupations, which takes years to build back up again. In the short term, Hurricane Andrew increased the unemployment rate and decreased GDP. However, in the long run, with construction and rebuilding, GDP may have actually increased.
On February 26, 1993, the World Trade Center, located in New York City, was bombed. A group of Muslim terrorists bombed it, killing 6 people and injuring over 1,000. This caused an increase in security, resulting in money being used to pay for that, along with rebuilding the huge World Trade Center. This must have costed an extreme amount of money.
The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, was a multinational agreement regarding international trade. Its main purpose was to substantially reduce tariffs and other things that got in the way of international trade. It was negotiated during the UN Conference on Trade and Employment and lasted until 1944. This has not only created more jobs for the U.S., but also allowed for an increase in international imports, which boosts the economy. Right when Clinton entered office, one of his first fiscal changes was that of increasing taxes. Some say this is the cause of the 1990s economic boom, however some say it is not. This affected the economy because it brought more money into the government and away from the people. By the end of his first term, the top income tax was near 36%, but the economy added 11.6 million jobs.
NAFTA was a free trade agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico that was formed in 1994. This agreement created the largest free trade area in the world, linking together over 450 million people. This affected our economy very positively by causing trade between the nations included to skyrocket. In response to Iran's campaign to acquire weapons of mass destruction, President Clinton used a trade embargo with Iran. This was hopefully to slow down their drive. This had a very negative impact on the economy, with the loss of thousands of jobs in the industrial, farm, and oil field equipment manufacturing.
On August 6, 1991, the World Wide Web made its public debut. The World Wide Web not only sparked new ideas for the future, but it also increased the demand for computers. This invention increased demand for computers because the only way to get immediate access to the web was to have a computer. Also, the release of Windows 95 was one of the first massive widespreads of the internet.
The United States government shut down for a total of 21 days in the years 1995 and 1996 due to a feud in Congress and the executive branch. President Clinton could not come to agreements with Congress over things like Medicare, education, and public health. This caused the loss or furlough of many government jobs and affected the economy as there was no federal budget and there was a great loss of jobs and a decrease in GDP.
On August 5, 1997, President Bill Clinton signed one of the largest tax reductions in the United States, the Taxpayer Relief Act. This act caused many people's federal income tax liability to decrease, which increased households' disposable income. When a household takes in more disposable income, its consumption increases, and when consumption increases, gross domestic product increases.
In 1999, the euro was made the official currency of the 11 nations who make up the EU. This allowed them to function under one bank and not have to worry about exchanging money, which made trade much more smooth.